We've had a lot to say about GLP-1s on this channel, and I think they're neither good nor bad. I kind of think they're indifferent, to be honest, because you can use them and derive great benefit. You could use them and also derive zero benefit, quite literally, based on data that's pretty concrete and people's habits. A GLP-1 is dependent on you as the person to make it work effectively, and that's just the sad reality of what we're working with here. Some people's habits are just so bad, so murky, that it doesn't matter what you do. You're always going to end up in the same position. And without changing those habits, yeah, sorry dude, you're just going to be that guy for the rest of your life, or gal. But there is one thing for sure. GLP-1 agonists have been cannibalizing Greg Doucette's sales by a little bit. And no, I am not bullshitting you. In fact, he started a campaign to work against GLP-1 agonists while also selling them, which is a really interesting thing. See, recently Greg Doucette came out with a video, Going Blind from Ozempic, New Lawsuit Raises Alarms.
Ozempic causes blindness, and I'm not making this shit up. How important is it really in order to lose weight? Well, it's certainly important enough that people are willing to risk blindness. And unfortunately, 1,800 individuals who've used Ozempic have gone blind because of it, and they're involved in a $2 billion with a B lawsuit against Ozempic.
In this video, he claims that people are going blind from Ozempic, and there is a causal factor here due to using the GLP-1 agonists, and you probably shouldn't use them. As you said, people are willing to go blind to lose weight, and yes, indeed they are. If you've been overweight in your life, if you've been obese in your life, that position ain't so friendly to be in, and it's not comfortable. A lot of people would be doing a lot to get out of that position. Of course, running, eating less food, having to suffer with a bit of hunger. Yeah, these things are pretty uncomfortable as well. So sometimes people don't weigh that cost to benefit ratio, but nonetheless, there's a lot of people willing to do even crazier things to get a better look. I mean, just look at clavicular here.
Big Pharma does not want you to know the true dangers of taking Ozempic. Blindness, thyroid cancer, gallbladder disease and gallstones, pancreatitis, SIBO, depression, kidney damage, severe nutrient deficiencies. And you would rather do all of that than put the fork down and or to do cardio.
And sure, there's a lot of things tied to GLP-1 use, but one thing that I'm going to really specifically call out here is the habits and lifestyle that people live prior to using GLP-1 agonists and how those can play a role in these symptomologies or these comorbidities that people are having when using GLP-1s. A lot of this can be cleared up simply by saying that person's a idiot and they probably shouldn't be using a drug it just solely to lose weight as opposed to changing anything else in their life, and just creating this colloquial statement where you're saying GLP-1s do X when you take Y, right? It's silly, it's stupid, and often it doesn't apply to everybody or even close to everybody. That's like saying you could kill yourself with aspirin, so you probably shouldn't take it. What are the chances of that? And look, I'm not downplaying that there is some concerns with GLP-1s, and you can't necessarily trust society to do the best things for themselves, but I'm a huge proponent of bodily freedom and survival of the most fit. If you simply ruin your life by doing these things, that's your choice, and you should be able to make that choice. I shouldn't have to bubble wrap you to stop making those choices, nor should society at large. I think you have the freedom to do that, and if you so choose to do it, as long as you're educated, that's your choice.
Ozempic causes reduced blood flow to the optic nerve, triggered by rapid blood sugar drops, quick weight loss, and vascular stress, which can lead to sudden blindness. In a 2024 study, when they started looking at this, 8.9% of people who are taking the semaglutide or Ozempic, they experience vision loss, while in comparison, the people in the same group, obese people, diabetics, and so on, the people who did not take that drug, it was under 2%. And so a significantly greater proportion of people who take this drug are experiencing vision loss than those who don't, and so it is a serious risk.
And he claims the mechanism at hand here is somewhat related directly to the GLP-1 from its blood glucose dysregulation. And you could argue this, but I don't know. I have a bit of a different, maybe nuanced opinion on this topic, and something that I think is just often not talked about in general, because people like to condemn drugs and say that they're bad. And I am, while talking about the same things often on this channel, very clearly in almost every video, I talk about how I actually think pharmacology is good and it can be leveraged to your your benefit most of the time. It's just that people use this shit wildly wrong and recklessly and expect insane results. And through that expectation, it leads them through many loopholes of abuse and lack of consideration for things of, context relation, right? Like most drugs are contextually used, and if you're not using them in a correct contextual situation, you're not doing it appropriately and likely leading yourself down a path that's not advantageous. The current blindness litigation is largely centered around non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. A whole mouthful of shit to say, but basically it's often described as an eye stroke. Your eye basically has a dysfunction with its optical nerve, and you do momentarily or even permanently lose vision. Now, rather than the generalized claim that GLP-1 agonists are inherently causing this to happen, there is far more nuanced takes on this and clinical reports that show this is probably not the case. Regulators have acknowledged that this is a very, very, very rare case in which using GLP-1s can cause this, but most of the studies are completely observational in nature, and the key point here is they're weighing it against general population. For instance, a Harvard eye study posted in JAMA just as of 2024 reported that there was a higher, I'm just going to call it NAI for ease of saying it, but it's the same optical neuropathy that we were talking about before, but they found a higher NAI risk in semaglutide users when compared to the general population. However, the author explicitly notes that no known biological mechanism and discussed potential biases from using semaglutide or its relative partners is here. Nothing is known. Then an even larger multi-database study from JAMA found a smaller association with a greater population size, mind you, suggested that if any effect was present, it may just be a miscalculation of data and could probably not even be real. So here's what's really going on, and here's my thought compared to kind of what a lot of Greg Doucette had to say. In this video, he made a very important claim. I'll just post it up here.
Imagine you had identical twins. One is taking Ozempic, is going to lose 100 pounds. The other loses 100 pounds without taking Ozempic. The person who did it without Ozempic essentially is going to be healthier. And so if you can, in fact, lose the weight without it, then of course I would encourage you to do so.
Basically, yeah, he's saying, if you were to use a GLP-1 agonist, you're going to be less healthy if you had just lost weight independently on your own. I can see where he's going at with this, but it's wildly false, because at the end of the day, the people that are using Ozempic in these trials are individuals who are diabetic, are individuals who are severely overweight and obese, not just kind of overweight and obese. And one thing that we know is a causal factor to this specific disease case is dysregulation of blood glucose. You see, elevated blood glucose for a prolonged period of time can be very damaging to all vasculature within the human body, but specifically your eyes. And what better group to study using these drugs than the severely overweight and obese? And the point that I'll take that Greg had said was that the habits that need to be built to lose weight without GLP-1s sometimes aren't put in place when you're using GLP-1s. People are leveraging these drugs as a means to lose weight as opposed to having learnt any sort of new habits or integrated them into their environment. They're just raw brute forcing GLP-1s. They're smashing it, that fucking hammer, into like the GLP-1 agonist pathway, and they're saying, hey, I hope I lose weight. And what that does, what that really does, is at the end of the week, you've injected at the beginning of the week, the drug starts to wear off after 5 or 6 days, you start getting hungry again. What is that person going to reach for? Well, likely the bag of chips, likely the sugar infused fucking Starbucks drink that's like 1,000 calories somehow.
Oh my gosh, don't have any non-fat milk.
Elevating their blood glucose through the roof after an entire week of having relatively low carbohydrate models, hopefully. And so you see this wild dysregulation in blood glucose. And another thing that I'll say about GLP-1s as somebody who uses a lot of them and has definitely experience with the compounds of basically all subtypes, you can't eat for sure. Like, especially if you use these things at a high doses, you just aren't hungry. You don't want to eat. But what you do want to eat is something sweet, something tasty, a snack, right? You want to jump for the things that are easy to consume because you want to eat, but you don't feel like eating a lot or even at all. So, a couple candies is easier to eat, a candy bar, a pint of ice cream. These things are very easy to consume even on GLPs because it's not necessarily changing your mental frameworks. So grabbing for that sweet treat isn't any more difficult. You're just not hungry for other things. So, having the chicken and rice, for example, that's far less appealing by a large margin than having a quick candy bar or two. And so you get this kind of habit built in with GLP-1s where somebody is eating a girl dinner more than they're actually eating real dinner. And what does that do at the end of the day? Well, when you eat carbohydrates in absence of protein, wild blood glucose dysregulation.
If you're using these medications, please use them for the good. Try to allow it to assist you in changing your habits for the better. Don't just rely on the drug to do all of the work, as many people are. Why not try to come off? If you're taking this right now and you're concerned with blindness, or perhaps you don't want to spend as much money, why not just see what happens if you stop? See, have you changed your habits? Is the cardio that you're doing, the exercise, is it enough to curb your appetite? Because if you can come off these medications, it's not going to just save your money, it's going to make you healthier. And so why would you not at least give it a try?
This is the point that Greg makes where he's actually correct. You can use this stuff to help, but you can't use it independently to lose weight. So this some billion-dollar lawsuit or whatever, I can see why people are upset, but to be honest, what's likely happening is they're independently using this drug to lose the weight, not building habits around using the drug to lose the weight. In most studies, you do see a situation where people will lose 30, even 50 pounds in some cases, especially if those studies are really long. But after those studies, they come back a year later, they gained all the weight back again. And that's simply because in a lot of data, they just give them the drug and say, good luck and hope for the best. And then coming back when they take the drug out, well, yeah, they just kind of fall back into their old self. But when you look at studies where they pair the drug with nutritional guidance, with food therapy, with much, much more, exercise regimes, you find that that doesn't happen as often. All this to say that, GLP-1s, especially if you're like a guy or a gal who's trying to lose some weight, are not going to condemn you to blindness. Like, it is not going to do that. Yeah, I use them. I wear a CGM. I'm not diabetic. I just wear it because I like to know my shit, right? I'm a big geek on longevity and stuff. So I want to know where my health is at basically at any point during the day. I check my resting heart rate, my blood pressure, my blood glucose. Like, I'm a nut about this. GLP-1s for me don't modify my blood glucose that much. They don't modify my serum insulin levels that much, fasting or non-fasted. They don't really change much at all. All they really change is my willingness to eat food or not. But the thing is I have built habits over almost a decade of competing in bodybuilding and being in the fitness world that are sustained even when I use them or don't use them. And so I personally don't go for things that are snacky, that are ridiculously unhealthy for me. Or when the GLP-1 wears off, I'm not going to the local Chinese buffet and slamming down some food to get a moon face next day. But it is those people who are likely getting these outcomes most often. Now, of course, the pharmaceutical companies that are pushing this stuff and fighting against these lawsuits, which there's over 3,000 lawsuits for gastroparesis alone, they're fighting against them, saying that there is absolutely no causal factors to cause gastroparesis or optical neuropathy. In fact, what is happening here and what these companies are urging people to do is to, in specific in the court records, is to place cases in which those individuals already had symptoms of gastroparesis like into the frameworks here, because as they're trying to prove, a lot of the people who are using these GLP-1s are severely unhealthy already. Like, they are at the worst percentile for an unhealthy American, and they're using GLP-1s to try to improve that. But if they don't fix those fundamental habits, the shit's just going off the charts here. Like, they're just still unhealthy people. They're just inhibiting their appetite, expecting it to do some kind of miracle, and then they get mad when a miracle doesn't happen. And if you take somebody who's eating 5,000-6,000 calories a day, being an absolute fat ass, they are going to feel like they have gastroparesis because they're still, I guarantee you, trying to eat that much food. Because once you get that obese, you're not eating because you're hungry. You're eating because your mind tells you need to eat. And GLP-1s don't control your mind. They control your appetite. And it will make you feel wildly full, like unhealthily full. So the point is to not eat as much, but these people likely are doing that. And you all know they're the same type of people who want to make a quick buck, okay? Let's be honest about that here. And what's interesting here is I have another data set where it actually showed over a 5-year time span, patients taking GLP-1s, and this was a 7,319 patient cohort, patients taking GLP-1s actually showed lower risk of developing any sort of macular degeneration or any kind of dysfunction with with the retina of their eye. And in fact, other use cases of drugs that treat high and dysregulated blood glucose and obesity, like metformin or insulin directly, had a significantly, in some cases, almost tenfold greater risk at developing retina-based problems or vision-based problems. So look, Greg's mad because the GLP-1 scene is cannibalizing his own cookbook, his very own cookbook, and his $36,000 a year coaching. But we all know what's really going on, okay? Like, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. In fact, I think GLP-1s for the fitness industry specifically are one of the best things that's ever happened, okay? Because at the end of the day, you can get people looking absolutely diced and shredded and have good facial aesthetics without having to abuse other drugs, which are far more harmful for the human body. And I think we can all agree that 19-year-olds blasting steroids, taking Anavar, testosterone, trenbolone, taking a swath of different things like clenbuterol, thyroid hormones, etc., becoming a pharmaceutical bank, are way better off just taking a GLP-1 agonist. Let's be for real here, right? If we're to weigh these two things and this person is motivated to do what they're going to do and then we can't control them, I think they're going to be far better off taking that GLP. Might be a hot take, but that's my personal opinion. And what's crazy is in this video, as he's talking about don't do GLPs, they're bad for you, they'll cause blindness, he shouts out his company, AlgoRx, and says, hey, if you need to lose weight, use our company.
Reduce those drugs or perhaps cut them out completely and try to do it on your own. Don't use drugs as a fix for all of your problems. And remember, if you're interested in HRT, in clomiphene, Cialis, telmisartan, a host of different drugs, perhaps also you're looking to lose some weight, well, click the link in the description, code Greg, 10% off with AlgoRx. They can also get your blood work.
Bro, your company's giving them the GLP-1s. Like, what are you talking about? Isn't that a little bit of a conflict of interest here? I don't know, man. The internet's funny. The internet's really funny. And look, I'll be honest. Like, I think people can be unhealthy and use GLP-1s. They can use it as an unhealthy mechanism to lose weight or to look a certain way. But as long as you've built foundational habits that are generally healthy, you're going to be better off than the average Joe. That's for sure. Not saying to use drugs or whatever, but like in all reality, if you're facing yourself with a lifetime of obesity and you have massive eating disorders and you need something to get you on the right track, a GLP-1's a really great option, as long as you understand that you need to build foundational habits alongside of its use. But it could be that stimulus into pushing you into those behaviors and solidifying them versus never having solidified them at all. Oh, also, if you're interested, we did start a company that prevents hair loss and improves mental function pretty massively. It's called Blue Mind Boost. You can see it down below in the description. Click the link, use code Coachkolton. If you ever wonder how I make these videos with minimal cuts and talk so fluidly, I use a product called Methylene Blue. We sell it. It's pretty freaking great. By the way, it's all made in America. That's a topic that I think no one's ready to discuss with a lot of these other companies. And then another product that we do offer is Super Follicle Fuel, prevents hair loss, something that Greg Doucette needs to use. He's still experiencing diffuse thinning even after his hair transplant. But we use this product directly for treating hair loss with people who have used androgens or steroids in the past and significantly lost hair density, like massive amounts of it, or people who are trying to prevent further hair loss as they move through life without having ever used steroids. It's really non-significant whether you use them or not, but it does definitely sustain hair and potentially even regrow hair with the certain ingredients that we're using. So go check that out. Link down below, code Coachkolton. But in other words, guys, I will see you in the next video. I hope you're having a beautiful new year. You're getting lots of success. You're making yourself happy and you're doing the good things for yourself. I don't know. Generally for me, lean is law. So if you have a goal, an aspiration to get leaner this year, I think a GLP-1 is a solid choice. If you're going to look at the array of things that pharmacology provides, it's not going to get you blind, especially if you've built habits around being healthy already.